Okay. Everything recording? I hate this part so much.
Good intro.
Thank you. Me and Jordan, no. I have to say hello or something.
Hey, Brother Weaver.
Brother Weaver in the morning. Today, Angry Jordan and me talked about listen, like, share, all the things. Have a great day. Okay, bye for now.
Actually wasn't rolling, so we gotta do one more.
Really? Actually? Yeah. Okay, I was going to want to do it again anyway.
I'll pray for you. 3, 2, 1, go.
I'm thinking again. I lost everything as soon as you said go. So often I forget about that. Nope, dang it.
Wow.
I don't know.
Often I ponder.
Today, me and Jordan talked about prayer. We talked about if God know every... Hold on, let me start.
You got it.
So I hope you guys love it. Why, as soon as I transitioned to ending it,
This somehow makes me so happy because
What's
you
up,
have had
guys?
sit here and watch me struggle so much.
I know.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Aha!
Today we're talking about prayer. If God knows everything, why do we pray? All right.
Nice work.
Hello, welcome back to Discussions with Jordan.
Here I am.
Jordan, how are you?
Hi, I'm good.
Good. We had a huge turnout at the roping. Are you tired from that?
Yeah. No, that's good. I tell you what would have been worse is if nobody would have showed up. I would have been.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I would have been way worse because, I mean, you get the arena ready, the steers ready. You have no control over who comes, but it's like setting the table for everybody, but you're not sure how many people are going to come.
Right.
And so, I was glad we didn't have too much food.
Yeah, we had a lot of people there.
Yeah, it was awesome.
I am personally excited for today's topic because you just go through life and you do things or sometimes without even realizing or remembering what the purpose or the origin of those things are, you know?
You know what that's called?
What?
Religion.
Yeah, that's okay.
Can I just vent for a second before we get started?
Yes.
If you're tuning in, I'm expecting there's going to be some questions. I've lived my whole life frustrated with the fact that the church, if it's not careful, the church can get so far into human practices and human seriousness that we alienate people from what we say we believe. Mm-hmm. You had better wear this. You had better act like this. We need to confront people. We have to hold people accountable. People that aren't even church people. Like, right. How many times do you hear stories of somebody, I'm just going to rant. I got to get off my chest. If you guys are listening, sorry. Here comes Jordan, and he's ranting. But like people that are not believers, and then the church people confront like, you're going to hell. You're going to go to hell. You're going to go to hell if you don't change your ways. Mm-hmm. And people are like, if that's how people act, then I don't want to know what goes on in there, right? And so I've lived my whole life feeling like I belonged more outside of a church than inside of a church because the fanaticism that people develop for something because they think that it's serious. Mm-hmm. And I would define that as the religious experience, not the gospel of Jesus that is kind of almost anti-human religious. Mm-hmm. I've spent my whole life saying like, guys, stop. Like if you act like that, it doesn't bring like people into what we say that we believe. You're actually alienating people. It drives people away from your cause. Stop being so just militantly religious about what it is that you say you believe. And I feel like it's starting to turn the tide. And then all of a sudden you look up and now everybody's just off on another tangent. Now their religion that's in the streets, like you have to wear this, you have to say this, you have to do this. And if you don't, you're costing people's lives. And I'm like, I've heard this whole thing before. Used to be that the church would do it. And now people in the streets are doing it. So if you're watching and you're feeling like the world's gone crazy, just know like this is not new. Right. It's like round 7,000 of humans thinking that they're onto something that's so important that it forces compulsion. You have to comply. Mm-hmm. That's how important it is. We can't smile. We can't laugh. We can't show each other a little bit of grace and compassion and kindness and mercy and lightheartedness. It's far too important for that.
Yeah.
So just know if it feels like I'm being grumpy.
Well,
I mean, I got it off my chest. I feel better. Everybody stop being so stinking religious.
If you feel like you're doing something wrong, that's like the opposite of welcoming.
Yeah. Okay. So say you're going to try to convert me to your cause. Mm-hmm. Do you think that what's going on in the news right now, like draws people in like, man,
you know what I need?
Oh man, look at all these loving people just loving on each other, like leaning into a relationship with people that don't agree with them. What a great group that I want to be a part of. Mm-hmm. The only people that are going to fall for that are people who are naturally fearful. They're, I don't want that group to get me. I guess I better comply. Right. Which is the same people. A lot of times that ended up in crazy fanatic religious cults. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm kind of sick of it.
Yeah. Well,
it's another way to direct people's thoughts and actions. I'm telling you, Jan, if you haven't picked up on it yet, people are tuning in. They're like, what's wrong with Jordan today? I'm just tired.
Yeah.
I'm tired. I feel like I've been fighting this battle forever from within. And now I'm like, oh, So I go to battle to try to do everything I can to like lessen the stringent hate of human practices. And I'm like, okay, now you got them.
Yeah.
They're everywhere.
Well, I mean,
Makes you realize why Jesus was like this. He's like, I'm going to have to do this.
yeah.
I'm going to have to do this because if it's up to, they're literally getting farther away every single day. Like if it wasn't for Jesus, what hope is there?
Yeah.
Oh, and you know what else is bugging me right now?
Go ahead.
Here's what else is bugging me.
How does that
it
make you
doesn't feel, well, thank you for asking.
Yeah.
Is there a couch? Do you have a pen?
I do.
It feels like right now that the pieces that are necessary for bringing us back to the middle and back to sanity are not being talked about. For freaking instance, just with human health, why aren't we talking about better health habits? Why aren't we talking about healthier immune systems? No, we don't have time to talk about that. We got to talk about compliance. You got to comply. Why aren't we talking about loving each other? Why aren't we talking about leaning into conversations with people that don't agree with us? All these things that are going to bring sanity back to the nation. It's like not even being considered in the public forum. We have got to be the most militant, the most mad, the most offended. Someday, can we have somebody on the podcast someday that's like, I'm offended? I'm like, okay, great. You're the one.
Yeah.
You're the one.
Yeah.
Tell me I'm offended. Okay, so what are you going to do with being offended? I'm going to be mad. Okay, got it. Let's be mad. Then what?
Yeah.
I'm going to demand change. Okay, all right, great. You're mad. You're offended. And when you're offended, what does that do? Because what it comes down to is when people are, I heard this one. And as a pastor, I hear this every now and then of like, I tell you what, I've got a lot of patience with people, but I'm going to tell you this. When somebody says the GD word, I can't stand for it. And I'm like, that's your limit. So that's where someone who doesn't even believe the way that you believe, you're going to stand up and demand that they comply to your standards. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like we all have something. We all have something that's like, no, you have crossed me and now I've got to confront you and hold you accountable to I'm offended. I tell you what, that one offended me so much, I'm not going to stand for it. Like, can everybody that's offended, shut up. Just shut up. I don't care if you're offended. Let's talk about solutions. Let's talk about working towards actual solutions. And we talk about solutions, conversation drops off.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to talk about conversation.
Everybody just wants to be heard.
Everybody wants to be the maddest.
Yeah.
And the most offended. Well, I just, and then the new thing that we've brought about in 2020 that's so much fun is I want to be offended on behalf of someone else. Like I'm going to pretend that my truth claim outweighs your truth claim about someone else. Curtis Smith said, not the day to mention Kate Brown, huh? Everybody thinks they're not religious, and then everybody is. I'm probably dipping into it today too. But my point is, I don't know. You get it.
Well, let's dive into something that could help, possibly. The topic is prayer.
Okay.
So, I mean, because it was one of those things where I was thinking the other day of, man, I don't know if I've heard somebody just talk about
Just prayer.
why, what it is, why, when, where, how.
Yeah.
About prayer.
Yeah.
Because it's the first thing you do. People that don't believe in God are like,
We've been on here for like 15 minutes and they're just now, okay, here's the topic.
Yeah.
Jordan's been ranting for a while.
Because you just don't hear about it. It's the first thing. People that don't believe in all the other stuff still kind of like they know, okay, well, you pray.
Yeah.
But I don't even
Well,
know.
it's also the one that people who get in a bind instantly go to of like, okay, if you're up there.
Yeah,
We're
exactly.
naturally wired to pray.
Right. So just as a baseline, what is prayer?
So one of the things I try to avoid, I'm sorry, a squirrel, but look up here. You guys won't even see this. This has nothing to do with anybody watching. See my line? It's all white for me talking the entire time. And then Jacob's bottom line is like really quiet. So,
Yeah.
sorry, everyone. Prayer is one of those things. Like I always try to avoid formulas because when you go to a formula, then it becomes like, here's how you do it. Here's how you make God happy. You do this. Here's how I do it. I do it this way. But prayer is the one thing that Jesus actually gave us a formula on. And he said, when you pray this way. And he gives us the Lord's Prayer. And it gives us sort of just some lists and topics and things like that. And so if it's one area where it can be like a formula, because I think so many times people go to God and we're so limited in our humanity. I can't remember who it was. Somebody this week said, why is it we can stand by the ocean, look out over the ocean, see how deep it is, how vast it is, realize that we have no clue what's out there. Just feel the bigness of the ocean and realize we can't fully comprehend everything that it holds. Mm-hmm. and yet we expect that God is going to be something that we can understand. So I think that what prayer does, like a lot of times, by the time someone who doesn't pray in a habit, by the time somebody finally gets to a point where they're willing to pray, they feel that sense of being overwhelmed. There's that sense of like, where do I even start? God, okay, I can't tell you how many times I've felt like in my spirit, I just have kind of got a crust. Maybe you guys heard the last 15 minutes of this podcast, but you kind of get a crust and you go to God and you're like, I don't even know where to start. Right. I don't even know where to start. Like, I feel like there are, it's like those video games where you got 1,000 things coming at you at once and you're like, I just want to push the reset button. Like, so a lot of times by the time the average person goes to God in relational prayer, it's because something has broken down somewhere in a relationship, somewhere in their life. Something has gotten so overwhelming that they look for the reset button and they don't have it. And unfortunately, where it usually starts is like, God, can you specifically fix my felt need? I have this felt need. Can you address the felt need? And that's generally where people start.
Right. So, talking to God is like the baseline.
Well, even the act of talking to God, because if faith is just being persuaded, if that's all that faith is just being persuaded, the act of prayer in the beginning is a tangible step towards faith.
Right.
Like, if you don't believe the possibility that God is out there, whatever your belief is on him, that when you go, okay, if you're up there, that's faith. That's a step in the right direction. That's literally to me, that's the first turn and face and go, okay, if you're there, where do we even start this interface?
Mm-hmm. So then why do you pray?
So, philosophically, you go, if God knows everything and you don't, what tangible value is there? You going to God not knowing everything, him already knowing everything. And what the old timers used to say, I was curious if there's anybody on the podcast listening whose grandparents or parents used to say you need to pray through. I don't know if that's a Southern thing. I don't know if that's just a preacher family thing, but they used to say pray through. And what that meant was, like, you go to God in prayer and you stay there until you feel things kind of starting to break loose. Right. You feel like that, like, because casually, like, hey God, what's up? Like, that's kind of I'm tired. It's bedtime. I know I'm supposed to do this, But what God teaches us is when God said, our Father which art in heaven, that was the first time that Jesus is giving permission to humanity to reference God as a father. Because before he said he's my father, or he's God and he's a king and there's the separation. But Jesus said, when you pray, our Father, what you're doing is you're removing a layer of reverence. There's a statement, I can't remember who said it. I wish I could. I'm not trying to steal quotes. I just know it wasn't mine. That said, if you're going to go to the king for water at 3:00 in the morning, if you're going to wake up the king for water at 3:00 in the morning, you'd better be the prince. And Jesus is going, that's you. That's what you're, hey, what's up, Caleb? And, so in my mind, when I'm praying, if I'm remaining distant of like, okay, king, like I'm not trying to bother you. I just got this little thing I need real quick. Right. If you could just give me just a little bit. Okay, good. I'm gone. And God's going like, that's not what prayer is supposed to accomplish. What prayer is designed to accomplish is that you're coming in, you're sitting down, and I'm going to tell you some of my most powerful prayer times start with literally just me being quiet and just like God knows I'm sold up, and I'm like, I'm sold up, but I'm here.
And you just sit there.
Just sitting. And you're like, well, that doesn't seem that hard. Hey, try it. Try to turn your phone off. Try to put your phone down, go into a different room, and just be quiet with God for a while. So the prayer, the formula, God kind of spells it out in the Lord's Prayer, but for me, it's literally just realignment. What's the purpose of prayer? In my life, it's that I realize that I said it Sunday, if you're floating down a river and you're about to drown and there's a log, and the log, you see that the roots are still connected to the bank, and intellectually you go, yeah, that log would hold me for sure. Right. If I grabbed it, I could grab it and I could crawl out and life would get better and I wouldn't drown. And you agree and you believe it wholeheartedly and you go, yeah, that's great. And then you don't act on that belief, then what happens? It doesn't matter if you believed it or not. Right. Like the belief itself by itself does nothing. But by acting on it, by choosing to create a choice in your head and bring that choice into the world, into reality, by reaching out and grabbing the log, your choices have the power to change reality. Does that make sense? Yeah. So when you make the choice from inside that says, I'm going to tangibly go spend time in the presence of God, you are practicing acting out on a faith that you say you believe. Does that make sense? Yeah. Like instead of just like, yeah, I believe God could do this. Well, what are you doing about it?
So it's reaching.
It's the choice. It's reaching for the log and saying, based on what I believe, because I think what happens is when it comes time to act, sometimes people go like, I don't really believe that log would catch me anyway. You know, they justify sinking back and not making the choice. And I think in my life, prayer is like one of those conscious decisions that I have to make, because like I said, sometimes I don't want to pray. I just want to sit there and sulk in front of God. And he's so patient. He's so patient not to condemn me or make me feel like, hey, if you're not going to act right, get out of here. That's what I do with my kids. I get impatient. God, I think there are times it's like you can feel it. You walk in and you're just mad and you're just like, because something's happened. You're finally desperate. And you're like, I haven't been praying, but today's the day. And you walk in and you're working through like, okay, I haven't prayed in a while. I should pray, but I don't want to pray. And you're just kind of mad. I swear there's times you feel like God's just kind of like,
Yeah.
I've got...
We can sit here all day.
eternity. So take your time.
Interesting. You said realignment, and that hits so well for me because that's what it is. Sometimes I mean, like when people pray, it's usually asking for something, you know, and I find myself in that boat as well. But sometimes it's just, I want to feel connected.
Yeah.
You know, I want to feel that you're still there.
Right.
What do you do when you don't feel that, when you're praying and you don't get that kind of like internal connection?
You ready for a mind-numbing concept?
Yes.
What do you do with the verse, and I ought to just look it up because I'm going to mess it up, that says everything that you ask in my name will be given to you? What do you do with that? That when you go to God, everything that you ask in his name. And so here's the mind-numbing part. Sometimes I don't want to go to God and talk to him.
Mary, can you
Puts my
put
heart
that
brain back on
you
track
Google that verse, put
every
it in the comments?
night, every day, every night. Yes, exactly. This is, of course, Timothy Keller, and you guys, anybody that knows me knows I'm just such a huge fan of Timothy Keller. But Timothy Keller said, God says yes to everything you ask. The way that you would have asked it if you knew what he knew.
Yeah. Damn.
I think that's kind of like in 2020, I go to God and I'm like, I've got so many things that I think would make this world so much better. But if I saw what he saw, the reality is people are scared now where they weren't 6 months ago, and they're asking deeper questions. And if I said, God, I just want to see people coming back to you. Yes. But I wasn't asking that. I was like, God, where do you want me to be? How do you want us to align? What do you want us to do?
Right.
And Nicole says, I thought it was always yes, no, or wait. It's if my kids said, Dad, can I have $1 million? First of all, the answer is obviously no.
Right.
But there's a book called David and Goliath. And it talks about how the parents that are successful, what made them successful. Tina, I'm going to read your comment in just a second. That what made them successful, they work and they become successful because they would ask their parents and their parents would say, no, I can't. Well, then they become successful and they have to tell their kids, no, I won't. And that's different. Like if you ask your parents for something, they go, no, I can't. It's right. Understandable. When a kid says, will you? And the parent says, no, I won't. But which one's better?
Right.
The no, I can't produces this super uber successful kid who has to get out there and work. The no, I can't and the no, I won't produces the same thing, but the heart that you feel towards your parents, that's the difference maker. Because if you say, no, I can't, okay, it's up to me, that's the result that the rich kid should feel, but doesn't, because he's like, then you don't love me, then, and that's what we do with God. That if God says, I can't do that, we would understand that, but we know full well that he can. And so when he says no to something that we wouldn't have asked for if we saw what he could see,
right,
then he's giving us a yes to everything that we ask in alignment with who Jesus is. He says, when you ask in alignment with who Jesus is, I say yes. And if I say no, it's because I'm saying no to something that if you saw what I saw, you wouldn't want.
Yeah.
I'm a good dad. And my frustration with 2020 is I want to fix everybody and everything, and I want to fix the church. I'm so frustrated with some of the things that the church does and some of the things that everything that politicians do. And I'm
right.
like, but God's going like, wait a minute. There's a breaking, there's a crushing that historically brings about such good when God says, no, I won't. Mm-hmm. Well, if God says, no, I won't, then you run the risk of being resentful, but it still produces the same good as a parent who said, no, I can't, and produces a successful kid. As I wake up in the morning,
Hey, Levi, can you click and drag the comments tab over so we can see the full thing?
Exactly. Tyler, I got through yours. Tina Davis, I'm going to look at your message right now. He's going to slide it over. There we go.
Perfect.
As I wake up in the morning, every morning before I place my feet on the floor, I thank the Lord for this day He has placed before me. We are truly blessed with each day and every day that we are given. It's a day to make a difference in our world, in someone else's life and in yours, with the Lord by your side. Exactly. And I think sometimes that at a simplistic level, you know, it's like simple, complex, simple. And like the original simple is like, just be grateful for everything. And I want to do that. But then I get into like, there's more people depending on us and what we do here than ever before. And so I feel the responsibility of that, but it goes back to the simplicity of like, then if I'll just keep doing what God's called us to do and I don't get so caught up in the riffraff, then He's saying yes to everything I'm asking according to His will.
Right.
So when I'm praying, what I'm actually asking is, God, align me to you so that I'll know what to ask. Yeah. Align me to you so that I've got a better understanding of your heart so that I'll know what to ask. I'm not going to God going, God, can I change your mind? And sometimes God will wait until eventually I'm prepared, I'm aligned to the point that God goes, I can say yes now. Now I can say yes. Where before, if we would have just gone to God, got what we wanted, we're off again, you know, we don't check back in.
Yeah. Yeah. Why did Jesus say pray in His name?
So that I think that goes back to the alignment thing, you know, the heart of who Jesus was. When you look at everything that Jesus did on our behalf for our benefit, to the benefit of others, like if we can pray according to the will of God in light of who Jesus was, then we're not going to ask for the selfish. Because so many times if you were to write down everything you were to ask God for, how many of those things ultimately lead to independence from God? So much of them. Like, I just want to be financially independent. God
Win
goes,
the lottery.
if that was the case, I wouldn't hear from you.
Right.
I just want a spouse. Well, if I gave you one, you'd think you were happy, and then you ruin her life or his life, and then you never talk to me. I just want, like, it would literally be like my daughter. She's 8 years old, going, I just want a car, and I'm like, under no circumstances.
Yeah. Absolutely
No.
not.
But if your heart, if what you're asking for is independence, well, let's look at independence, because that's really what you're asking for, is you want to be at a place where you can make independent decisions with your life. See, I get the opportunity to explain to her that you think that looks like a car, but actually it's not a car. It's like decision-making and discipline. Discipline is independence. And how do you explain that to an 8-year-old? So you say, well, and every no is a yes, right? So no, you're not going to get a car until you have proven that you are disciplined enough and responsible enough and you can handle that sort of independence. You work towards your independence, and the car is the result. It's not the thing that triggers your independence. So we're, 8-dimensional chess every time we go to God, and God is such a good dad that even if we don't fully, intellectually grasp what He's trying to tell us, He's faithful. It says that He's faithful to kind of take us through that process until eventually we're like, oh, thank God. Remember the Garth Brooks song that Chris Ledoux wrote, his Unanswered Prayers? He goes to like an old high school football game when he sees the girl that he begged God for, and he's like, ugh.
Yeah.
It's kind of that moment of like, thank you, God, for not giving me what I thought I wanted. Thank you for loving me enough and being confident enough in who you are that you're going to risk me being mad at you. By me, God, it's not that hard. Can you just this one thing, and then I'd be okay? God goes, you're not anywhere close to being okay. You just think you're going to be okay because that one thing seems like such a perfect solution to your problems. But your problems are, you want to be independent from me. The worst thing you could do for somebody was give them a feeling of independence from who God is.
Yeah. I remember, the verse where it said, just keep knocking. If you want your neighbor's sugar, if you need sugar from your neighbor, if you just keep knocking, eventually he's going to get up and answer the door out of irritation. And so, I use that concept, and he says use it in prayer if you just keep praying. And
I think every time that you're knocking, you're aligning. It's like a clock. You're getting closer. And every time you ask, you're maturing and you're getting a little closer and a little, because what does that indicate? If you're staying there and asking God again and again and again, you are literally demonstrating and acting out a faith or a persuasion that He's listening. Because what kind of insanity would it be to continue to ask a God that you don't believe in for something?
Right.
See what I mean? There's a faith demonstrated in who God is and the goodness of God, that He's going to bring it to fruition according to His plan. Bryson, can you do me a favor? As another pastor, Bryson said, are imprecatory prayers, Psalms, still a thing we should pray? Bryson's a pastor, and he's really smart. And sometimes he asks me questions that he knows full well I'm not going to know what they mean. Can you spell out what imprecatory prayers mean? Because I don't know.
What are some?
Hey, if you guys don't know Relentless Church in Phoenix, Bryce and Isom, we got to go down there last year. He said he's going to have me come preach.
Ooh,
Still waiting on that. Still waiting on that invite. I think it was just one of those kindness, like, oh yeah, I usually come preach once you know what imprecatory prayer means. You guys check it out; they're awesome. But okay, sorry, what?
What are some examples in the Bible of where prayers changed the course of action?
You know, a lot of times in the Old Testament, I think it says that God would relent. You know, that he's going to wipe people out. And Moses is like, no, please stop. And, you know, that when the letters in red in the Bible that talk about Jesus's words, the words that are written in black in the Old Testament are just as much God.
Right.
You know, and I'm going to be interested when I rabbit trail. Tess says hi. Hey, Caleb Weaver. Love you, bro. I love you back. Can you just throw me a softball, Bryson? Can you just put like a ball on the tee that's like, what is salvation? Something that I could understand. I think sometimes there was a demonstration. Like, for instance, there were times when Abraham would call Isaac to the top of the mountain and then provide the sacrifice. And everyone's like, what kind of God? I've heard people that are like outspoken atheists, like, what kind of God does that? That just seems torturous. Right. It's always symbolic. It is always demonstrating the heart of God to redeem people. Mm-hmm. I heard it today. What's her name? I just heard a sermon from Miguel. I'll think of it. I'm terrible. I remember the concepts. I just can't remember names. But she was saying that one time David was brought before the king of Gath, and Gath, you know, Goliath of Gath, right? And so right. David is wearing Goliath's sword, like he is in trouble. They're going to kill him. And he acts like a crazy person. He drools in his beard, which is very demeaning to him. And it says that God drove him out of there. And when he drove him out, he saved his life by driving him out of Gath. It's like a deliverance thing, right? And that's the same word that was used all the way back in the garden when God drove people out of the garden. The Adam and Eve out of the garden. It wasn't a mad and anger. He's driving them towards the promise of salvation. And so when you see God changing a course of action, the symbolism in there that points to the gospel, right? That Jesus, you know, standing in the gap, God's nature standing in the gap against God's nature type of a thing. You know, that Jesus, being fully God, is standing in line for the punishment from who? God. And you go, no, wait a minute. And that, I mean, you want to get into like some mind-bending type stuff. And so I wish I had, hello, Taylor Rounds.
We have a definition for
imprecatory.
Okay. To invoke or call down like evil upon a person.
I knew that one. I was just kidding. First try. I got a first try. No, I don't think that that's necessary. I think in the Old Testament, what you have is that God didn't remove the humanity from people. Hey, Bryson, I hope you're listening. You can take notes if you want to. You can preach it. That what you see in the Old Testament was God didn't remove people's humanity. There's one time that David is just kind of letting out his feelings, like bash their babies' heads against the rocks. Mm-hmm. And you go, what? What is that? Why is that in the Bible? Well, the Bible is demonstrating the humanity of a guy who is wounded. And then you see like the she-bears coming in and defending the prophet who was establishing the gospel of Jesus at a time when it was necessary, and the voice of the prophets were being challenged. And it wasn't children, it was actually like a street gang, and the establishment, right. The power of the she-bears and what that meant in symbolism. In the Old Testament, what you had was a runway. So you got a runway. And think of it as having a snake bite. You're out in the woods and your friend gets bit by a snake, and that is sin. And that person is going to die, not dead yet, but going to die. And there's a bush plane. And that bush plane has got to land. And once it lands, it's got the antivenom. And that airplane, that antivenom, that is Jesus. And if the Israelites disappear off the face of the earth, then all of the prophecy about who Jesus was, the promises that God had established through Abraham, if the Israelites disappear, all the promises disappear. And the person of Jesus cannot be in a former, like say if he is a Philistine, if he was born in the Philistine nation, he would be just as much God, but the story gets no traction. Nobody tells the story. The message of the gospel disappears. So in the Old Testament, you've got God constantly clearing that runway. Like if there's cows on the runway, moving cows off the runway so the plane can land. And what you see with Jesus, how many times you see Jesus, instead of pushing people back and like being almost what seems like harsh in the Old Testament, once Jesus lands, he's like, bring the Gentiles.
Yeah.
Bring the children, bring the infirmed, bring the non-believers. Zacchaeus, you don't do good and you're a bad guy and you've been a cheat. And I'm like, let's go to your house and talk. And so, no, to answer your question, imprecatory prayers, that's a word I use a lot actually in these days, but no, I don't think they fit anymore because the flow. I mean, God's nature was clearing the runway to preserve the Israelites so that Jesus could be who he was. And then all of a sudden Jesus lands and he starts bringing people back in.
Yeah. What does God get out of our prayers? Is he bugged by us?
I don't think anybody can ever understand this unless they are a parent or if they're close to a child. There is just nothing like it when a child wants to just come spend time with you at a level where they don't want anything. It's just that time, or even if they do, if they're trusting that you're going to be the solution. I mean, as a parent, you just, and I'm so limited where God isn't, but
right.
I get the sense reading the Bible that God has this genuine interest and love for people that we couldn't possibly understand. Bryson, I'm not sure if you heard how this podcast started, but I was in a grumpy mood too. I understand what you're saying. But just God has this thing that he does, and I don't understand it. I certainly don't understand it, but he does it with me too, where it's just like he's got his chin in his hands and his elbows on his knees, and he's leaned in and he's like, yeah, wow, you caught a frog. That's awesome. Where'd you find it? Why is that interesting? Like he just takes this genuine interest in us as people. And in that prayer time, he's aligning us to his heart, because if God is who he says he is, then evil is just the lack of God.
Right.
And the best thing that God could provide for us as people is himself. And so he realizes that by making himself available to us, he's giving us the best thing that he could give us. He's given us his full attention. And when the Bible says that every hair on our head is counted, that means not only does God know right where we are, he's never taken his attention off of us. It's literally every single moment. Think of that. We've got God's full attention on us right now.
Yeah.
In 2020, it's so easy to get distracted by that. But like, hey, I want to go solve the whole world's problems. Like, I want to get my truck and go to Salem. Like,
right.
I'll straighten this crap out.
Right.
And yet, at the same time, God's like, I mean, you can, but
but
I'm right here. I'm good. We're good. I'm going to do some cool things in your state. I'm going to disrupt a lot of stuff, and I'm going to mess things up. And people have this thing they do where they're just outspoken, and they're anti-establishment, or they're anti-anarchist, and they're and then they get scared, like, oh, God.
Right.
Everybody. They say there's no atheists in the foxhole. There probably are. There probably are, but they're probably fewer, right? And so when people get scared and they're like, okay, I know a guy who was laying on his floor. This was his salvation prayer. Ready? Drug addict, buzzed out of his head, just in a mess.
Right.
I should be wearing a mask if I'm gonna do that. Sorry. Laying on his floor, drugged out of his head, and he said, I don't even know who you are. I'm all emotional tonight because in my mind, this is the kind of stuff that changes lives. He said, I don't even know who you are. I don't know anything about you. But I remember being told that you're out there. And if that's true, I need you. That was it. He didn't give some big, he didn't even say the word imprecatory. And God just showed up and it changed his life. And I'm like, what does that tell you about a God who even in our darkest, most frustrating moments is like leaned in, like, let me, it's your choice. You got a choice in there. But if you'll act on that, if you'll just reach out and grab the log grabs you, and it's like that acting on it, he's demonstrating an element of faith that is so unintelligent and uninformed based on who God is. He just kind of basically goes like, I guess if you are, I need it.
Right.
God's like, great, that's all I need. That the goodness of God is so under discussed. The love of God, the vengeance of God gets talked about all the time.
Right.
But, I think of these people that right now there's so many people on the streets on both sides. It's like everybody's militant right now. And what they're needing is that, God, if you're there, can I see something that says that I matter to you?
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. I'm frustrated right now because it feels like none of that's getting introduced. It's just like who can rack the most rounds in a chamber and be the scariest looking.
Right. We have a question. I can't remember if we read it or not. Jan asks, why is the news not talking about getting down on our knees and praying and now becoming offended? You are feeding those thoughts and ideas. And now becoming offended, you are feeding those thoughts and ideas.
Because there are two sides at work. I mean, I hate to say this because it indicts a lot of people that matter a lot to me, but I think the church probably needed this worse than the streets did. The church need to realign to who they've been called to be. I think we've just kind of went to sleep. And so when people say, like, get down on your knees and pray, like, hold on a minute. We don't need the militant, angry, controlling, billions of dollars in our basement kind of churches anymore. Yeah. We need people that are going to go to the streets and go, we hear you. We've survived what feels like oppression in a church that says you have to do it this way. You can't, like as a kid, I wasn't allowed to go to dances. We weren't allowed to go to movies. We weren't allowed to go to parties. It was like all that God was thou shalt not.
Right.
And that's from, and I don't think that like my mom and dad were being intentionally that way. I think they're trying to do, because I was not a good kid. I was a very, very, very bad kid. And they're like, if we turn him loose in those environments, like, ugh.
Yeah.
So I get the struggle that they were facing, but we've had to come out of religion. We've had to come out of the oppression. And so if the church can show up right now and bring water and distribute it to both sides of the street in a sense, then I think we are coming back more to the gospel of who Jesus was. I so wish you could take Jesus. And I don't know if he would even participate. I'm curious. I wish I knew the answer to this. I wish you could put Jesus in the middle of all the conflict right now. And I'm just curious what he would do, what he would say.
Right.
I promise you he wouldn't have a side.
Right.
I mean, he was not politically driven. He would say something and people would just like, and just kind of lose their steam and walk off. And I'm like, what would he say? But he's got us. That's what we're here to do. I mean, that's what we're supposed to be called to do, is to be that light, right. And I think that's why people aren't praying. I don't think they've seen it demonstrated. I mean, until we're the church that's there kind of as like triage medics that say, hey, we're not here to be combative. We're here to love people. I mean, I don't think people would feel compelled to pray.
Yeah.
If it's the militant stand on the side, scream at the other side, and like, oh, by the way, and we're a church, then people are like, I don't care what you are, you're just over there. You're just one of them, whatever that means.
Right. Yeah, I like that concept a lot better. I mean, I've heard of stories of medics in World War II who didn't care which side you were on. I mean,
that's what a field medic's supposed to be.
Right.
A field medic is supposed to say that they're there to preserve life.
Right. And so you've got in trenches where both sides are just on top of each other.
Yeah.
And they're just fix, go to the next person, fix, go to the next person, fix,
Doesn't that feel like Jesus?
Yeah.
That just feels like Jesus to me. That's like, you're not solving it out there, and like, I'm not saying I'm anti-war. I don't know where I'm at all of that, but it just seems like Jesus would have been the one to show up and just love people even at his own expense. Mm-hmm. Not love people because of tribal signals, literally selflessly to the sake of his sacrificing himself, just loving people and going like, this is the solution. This is not the result of conflict. Love is not the result of conflict. Love is never, like, you don't ever see people that are in conflict resolve it by loving each other. They're mutually exclusive. And I'm from a culture of fighters. Like, I got a video today of somebody I know pretty well getting knocked down in a fight.
Yeah.
Just now. I mean, not that long ago. Like, I'm from a culture of people that are like, well, we're fighting now.
Yeah. The only way to resolve this.
I know how we'll fix this. We'll punch each other until somebody says they're wrong.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like conflict unfamiliar. It's just like, it doesn't, unfortunately, it's not the solution we hope for.
Well, that's it. That's all I got.
What about the Bible when it says pray for your enemies?
Yeah.
Go pray for an enemy and see how long you can hate them. Go literally pray love for your enemies and see how long you can continue to hate them.
I'll just be honest. I can't remember the last time. I mean, I can't remember the last time I did.
I'm just pointing to what I know is true. I'm not pointing to what I'm good at.
Yeah. That's crazy. Well, everyone, thanks you for tuning in. Go out and love people and have a great rest of the week. Bye, guys.